Okay, thanks. There you go. Sorry. Hi. So, sorry if those online didn't hear what I said previously. I was just talking about this being the final event of the SEMB or the beginning of the summer, depending on how you see it as a transitional period, and future events will be on our website. But for today, we are offering a panel discussion assessing the 2023 elections in Thailand. As you all, I'm sure, know, there were very eventful elections in Thailand just a couple of weeks ago with landslide victories, I suppose you can say, by the two opposition parties, but still very uncertain what will happen politically for the future of Thailand as we're in, speaking of a transition period, a strange kind of, change the metaphor, gray zone in Thailand, where the elections have been held, but the government not yet formed due to a variety of factors, which we'll hear more about in this panel. We're very pleased to have two distinguished speakers joining this panel. Let me begin with our first speaker, Dr. Pit Pongsavat, who's an assistant professor and director of the MA program in government and head of the Department of Government in the Faculty of Political Science, Chulalongkorn University in Bangkok. He received his BA from Chulalongkorn, his MPhil from the University of Cambridge, and his PhD from the University of California at Berkeley. He was previously a visiting fellow at the University of Oxford, as well as at Harvard University, a visiting assistant professor at the University of Michigan, and a guest professor at the University of Passau. His research currently centers on the politics of urban development, electoral politics in Bangkok. And if I may, let me go ahead and introduce the second panelist. While I've got the microphone here, that's my colleague, Dr. Federico Ferrara, who's an associate professor here at CityU, as well as a core member of CIRC. He is a graduate of Harvard University, and he's published on Thailand's political development, a major monograph with Cambridge University Press 8 years ago already, but timeless in a way.
An instant classic.
An instant classic. We've heard from the speaker himself. So, as well as, I should add, most recently, just last year, a book not about Thailand, but related to that project in terms of some of the intellectual development, if I may add, is called The Development of Political Institutions, Power, Legitimacy, Democracy, University of Michigan. So we're very pleased to have both of these speakers, but I'll hand over first to Dr. Pitt.
Thank you very much. I just happened to come to Hong Kong for my holiday, so I didn't mean to make everything serious, but Thai politics, I'm not sure how to look at it, whether it's look at it in a serious way or look at it like a holiday town now. So many things happen, and I'm just gonna lay down a lot of the information for you and for this seminar for further discussion after my presentation. Okay, this is the outline of my presentations. Talk about just in case on the basic informations, and then what is the result of the elections. Okay, and what kind, how can we make out of it? So,
Sorry, I was distracted with this.
So the online is okay, but not here, right?
Maybe here, right?
No, there's no slide in the room.
It's coming.
Yeah, it's warming.
Okay.
Give it a few minutes.
So I'll talk about mostly it's about the system of election now in Thailand, and as Professor Ma said, the government formation is probably not the same thing as election. Election's already done, and I think the new game just started. It's totally different than election game. Okay, and this is all a result of the coup d'etat in 2014. Okay, and then what the result of it? and then the preliminary analysis. Well, this is in short, right? There's so many things happened since 1997. The political reform as a result of the unstable democracy during the 90s. Okay, the 80s we got the semi-democracy with political stability, but not full freedom. Then, as all the fan club of Thai politics, we have Thaksin got in power, and there are a series of anti-Thaksin so many times, right? Then a series of coups. The first coup and the second coup that actually has a connection with the first coup, led by Prayut. Okay, and along this, another big player was a color conflict between the yellow shirt and the red shirt. Okay, and the PDRC, which is a combination of the red shirt and the urban middle class. Okay, after Yingluck. Okay, and then the big watershed is the pass away of King Bhumibol and the new king and the new constitutions that set up the rule of the game that we've been playing since 2016, the first general elections. Then the disqualification of Future Forward Party in 2019, and then a series of two big incidents, the COVID pandemic and the youth uprising for that 2 years. And then we have the second general elections. And what you already know that the young generations parties won. Now we have the new word, not just landslide, it's what they call skyfall, right? It's even more than landslide because it's not up to any kind of prediction at all. Okay, and this is a system of the parliamentary system and election system. So the parliament, we have 750. Okay, the House of Representatives that just have an election 3 weeks ago, 500 election or elected member, and 250 from the what they call the senators that unelected but selected by the coup d'etat, the junta group. Okay, and within the 500, we have the system of the 400 single constituency plus 100 party list. So we have 2 ballots. Okay, so basic idea is to favor the big political party to make sure that they have super majority, so they can guarantee the political stability. But in fact, the flip side was like Thaksin, you have the too strong executive, and then a lot of people they didn't actually listen to a lot of people demand too. Okay, so when you get into the ballot booth, the election with the voting booths, you have to vote for 2 ballots, one for your own area, the other one for the party. Okay, so you have 2 ballots. This is the timeline. Okay, elections already passed. Within July, 60 days from election, the election commission must announce official election result, and now it's not yet. Right, so this is the first delay. Right, you cannot form the government, you cannot start any work at all. Right, you need to wait for the 60 days of checking again. Right, checking all the qualification and the result of the election. Okay, we already have the election result since the first day. Okay, and then they just delayed for 60 days. Then within 27th of July, okay, just about a week and a half, they have to open up the session of the National Assembly or the Parliament. Then you have to elect the chairman of the House of Representatives as the Parliament chairman. This is important. And now they're debating on this between Pheu Thai and Cao Kai, the top 2 pro-democracy party. Why? Because this is the key position to propose the name of the prime minister. Okay. Then we have to elect the prime minister. Okay. But now what's happening is that no party win majority in the lower house, and they cannot have up to 376, 376 out of 750. So they need the support from the Senate that's actually appointed by the junta. Okay, this is kind of a Myanmar model. You need to ensure the stability of the government by being backed up by the military. Okay, and this one is no deadline. No deadline. So the junta government now, right, Prayut, can stay forever as a caretaker government. Okay, with the senator that appointed by him. Okay, how can that senator is gonna vote for the pro-democracy parties? Okay, and well, if it works, we will have the government around August. And well, so far it's not working. Okay, and this is the election result. Okay, this is the election result of the first 400 seat. Okay, the constituency party, the constituency system. Well, you see the Khao Klai and Pheu Thai, they equal, but in terms of the people, the voters, Khao Klai won 9.6 million. Pheu Thai won 9.3 million. Pheu Thai was expected to have the landslide one, but they lost. Okay, but let's see the area, right? The orange one, this is Bangkok area. So in Bangkok, they all from Khao Klai. Okay, my research now is on Bangkok area, actually still working on that. And only one from Pheu Thai. Okay, the south still the Democrat, the old rival of Pheu Thai. And the blue one is Phum Chai Thai, actually split from Thaksin's Thai Rak Thai before. When they form Pheu Thai, the other group form Phum Chai Thai. So this is the pro-government one. Palang Pracharat and Rwam Thai Sang Chat were the same group, right? Palang Pracharat was Pravit and Rwam Thai Sang Chat was Prayut. Okay, the Democrat 22 only in the south. Okay, and this is a small party. Okay. For the party list, this is like the whole country is one constituency, right? The second ballot, Khao Klai won landslide, not landslide, but the biggest majority, okay, with 14 million. So meaning they won even in the area that they didn't win the constituency vote. Okay, so this is a new party, right? Pheu Thai won 29. Rwam Thai Sang Chat, this is basically it's like a ballot for Prayut or not Prayut, right? Because Prayut is the head of Rwam Thai Sang Chat, the head of the junta. So he still won a lot. Okay, so this is the rest. Well, this is the party list score. It's a detail of it, but well, we already talked about 14 million, 10 million, and Prayut is 4.7 million. And after this one, right? So actually, we only have 7 parties that won the party list, like real party list winning, right? This is kind of the decimal one, but they can still being counted from the system up to this group. Okay, so only like 7 parties that survived the big game, plus a little bit of a small party. Then generations. Interestingly, because the generation X, okay, around 40 years old and 50 years old is the largest group, then generation Y. So the idea that Khao Klai is the party of the young generation doesn't work anymore, because generation C is only 7.6 million, but overall Khao Klai won 14 million, right? So there must be something beyond the generation theory of politics. This is a candidate of the prime minister, meaning the only party that won more than 25 seats will be eligible for the candidate selection. Okay, so Pita 151, right? When you combine the 2 tickets together, two ballot. Then the second one is Pheu Thai, the ex-Thaksin. She is the daughter of Thaksin. Okay, this is the close friend of Yingluck, Thaksin's sister. Okay, this is the legal advisor of Thaksin. The third group is Anutin. So this side is a pro-government side. Pravit actually performed better than Prayut in terms of the overall party politician, sorry. And then Jurin, the last one, last minute 25. This is from the Democrat, the old big party. So let me talk about some of the issue of the election result. Okay. So let's see the comparison between the previous election, the first election after 6 years of the junta, and then this time. See, last time we have only one ballot, but we have two systems within one ballot. But anyway, Pheu Thai performed very good in 136 seats, having 136 seats, but in terms of the popular vote, they got less than Palang Pracharat, Prayut Party, right? Even though Prayut Party got 116, but it was a kind of a fighting in terms of legitimacy because they couldn't win 375 anyway, right? But Pheu Thai won more seats, but not super majority. Okay, Future Forward, right, won 81. Actually, they won constituency for 30 seats, and then with the calculation of the real vote, they got 50 seats from the party list. So they performed the best in the party list last time, meaning they popular all over the country, but not in one constituency. They usually come third, come second, or come third in every constituency. But this time, you see, for the constituency and for the party list, right? We already talked about it, right? ก้าวไกล เพื่อไทย so ก้าวไกล jump from this to this, okay? When you all together from 81 to 152, which is very nice one. Okay, and this is a Bangkok area. Last time we have 3 big parties. The green one is the Prayut, the junta party. This is the red one is the Pheu Thai, and the orange one was the Future Forward, the previous party of the Move Forward. And when you see it now, okay, now it's all Move Forward, okay, and this is the only stronghold of Pheu Thai, and Pheu Thai only won 4 score above ก้าวไกล only 4 score, okay, and it's recounted actually. So look at this. I was trying to calculate it. Well, overall, you see the number of people in Bangkok is getting less. Okay. So the city is, the population is less, but actually it's expanding around Bangkok anyway. But in Bangkok, less population, but more engagement. Okay. 74% out of 72. Look at the performance last time. Future Forward won 800,000. This time twice the number. See, and Palang Pracharat last time, right? They won almost 8. Okay, just slightly different, but this time they got only 22,000. So all the vote here moved to the new party of Prayut. So they split the party into รวมไทยสร้างชาติ พลังประชารัฐ ไทยพรรคดี okay, and ภูมิใจไทย too. So ภูมิใจไทยwon got 5 MP from พลังประชารัฐ but they perform less, even they got more candidate. Okay, เพื่อไทย actually won a little bit more, right? But well, it's difficult to calculate because last time Pheu Thai only sent 20 constituency out of 30. Okay, but they have a second party called Thai Raksa Chat, but they got disqualified before the election. But they didn't perform that bad. Okay, and if you have to add up with the รวมไทยสร้างชาติ, right? Ex-head of Pheu Thai moved to รวมไทยสร้างชาติ, so the performance is not that bad. But look at the Democrat, from 4,700 down to 85. So this is actually the answer, one of the answer. Okay, part of the pro-Prayut, part a lot of pro ประชาธิปัตย์ they move to move forward. So not the pro democracy, right? But actually, this group is in the past, right? Last election, actually, Democrat in Bangkok led by Abhisit, ex-member, ex-PM, and he was running with the ticket of anti-Prayut anyway. So basically, a lot of young member of the Democrat now move to work with move forward too. So all the vote moving from the Democrat, right? And so for some of the disappointed from the regime moving to the move forward party. Okay. This is the last year city council result. Okay. So now it's all move forward. Okay, this is a detail of the performance of the party in Bangkok. But look at this second party list, right? This is how Gaopai move forward perform even better. You see, they are super popular, but not actually in Isan area. Okay, still they couldn't win a lot in Isan, but the north, this area, and even the south, see, Democrat gone, no popularity at all, even in the area where they won the local vote. Okay, look at Buriram. This is a stronghold of Phum Chai Thai. Okay, in Isan area. Okay, they won 10 seats for local, but for the party list move forward one, right? So basically, you cannot buy the vote for the second ballot. First, it's costly. Second, you just have to save your own ass. You cannot help the party anymore. Even though you run under the party that is not popular, you can win. Okay, but you cannot motivate people to vote for the party brand. Okay. Suphanburi, you see, even Suphanburi is stronghold of Chat Thai Patana in the central plain, right? They won landslide in the first one. But then, see, for the second ballot, the move forward win. Okay, Phetchabun, Palang Pracharat, but move forward win for the second one. Payao, Palang Pracharat, but move for Pheu Thai win. Okay, it's a neck to neck. So this is also Chiang Mai, stronghold of Pheu Thai. You see, stronghold of Pheu Thai not winning. Phuket move forward. Chonburi move to move forward. Rayong, Samut Prakan, right? So look at the poster a little bit. Different kind of poster. This is the poster for the party leader only. No local poster. This is only for the constituency MP. So, okay, they actually kind of ditch the party one, right? They want to survive. Okay, please just vote me and your second ballot up to you. Okay, they don't even advertise their party much. Okay, this is a policy one. Okay, it's different than the photo of the person. It's just the party policy. Pheu Thai emphasize on money. Okay, and the different one from the move forward. But these two in the middle is actually from the pro-government party. Is all about adding up money and welfare. So a lot of policy is the same. And this is a campaign strategy one. It's like, okay, for Pheu Thai, you just vote to landslide Pheu Thai, right? Don't worry about policy. The big one about move forward is what they call organic canvasser. It's actually a political disruption in the digital world. So this is a canvasser that didn't get paid at all. Okay, if you actually like buy a coffee in the coffee shop, right? The coffee shop is actually the supporter of Gaopai. They just put some keyword here, right? ก้าวไกลกาแฟไทยไม่เหมือนเดิม because the official motto is ก้าวไกลประเทศไทยไม่เหมือนเดิม meaning vote for ก้าวไกล the country change and this one is like vote for ก้าวไกล okay the Thai coffee change because they sell coffee and this is like the แมวส้ม in Thai is called แมวส้ม the ginger cat is the orange cat in Thai so they have the orange cat in the social network okay with this ก้าวไกล brand okay and then this is the food delivery one the food delivery person put the brand of ก้าวไกล on the back and they like ride around the city in YouTube okay so this is all organic the party didn't pay at all this popular program three superstar having a talk with the handsome man they invited Pita to be the guest the head of ก้าวไกล and they actually on air on the internet exactly the same time with the clip from เพื่อไทยthe story of แพทองทาน okay the prime minister candidate the sister the daughter of Thaksin look at the viewer 3.8 million views for 11 days this one only 73,000 see how organic of the multiverse of politics in Thailand now it's a big disruption TikTok is a big guess to this town different see look at the follower of TikTok of ก้าวไกล 2.9 million for เพื่อไทยis only 276,000 why TikTok and Google engagement is also the big one on ก้าวไกล the search one but why TikTok the TikTok is important because the algorithm of TikTok is different last time I did a research on Bangkok area but I had an interview with the future forward team last time with Charles last time they admit that they bought the advertisement for Facebook was the biggest one last time but they very smart in buying the advertisement like they know they couldn't reach certain group like they couldn't reach the middle age like the 30 years old up woman last time so they bought the advertisement that targeting the fan club of the mother and baby magazine that kind of thing in order to penetrate into that area because they couldn't get into the community the gated community one right but this time no advertisement from move forward at all they all organic and TikTok algorithm is different if you look at Line Twitter Facebook YouTube and TikTok right TikTok is actually outside the chamber okay Line is a closed group the conservative love to use Line because they send fake news under their own group like in Thai it's called like the Hello Monday one right they always send that Hello Monday Hello Tuesday one Facebook you need to have a kind of your own network and also the advertisement can get in right but TikTok is beyond that the algorithm of TikTok is like if you have a critical mass your message can get across your network there's nothing to do with your network if they are mass enough they can get into the other side of the part of the group so that's how the organic canvasser help out the party they become very popular basically they're popular up to the point that they can tear down the wall okay of the internet okay there's also dressing and everything they can just their fan club making on it then the debate right Pita is the only person that get into all of the debate not like other leader of the other party okay so I'm getting down to the last few points so the after the this is during the time of the election that's not that big issue on the less majesty actually there was not in the any poster okay well people know that ก้าวไกล was working on the anti-less majesty law right to reform the 112 law not abolish it but the rhetoric of 112 was not public. And the party that actually set themselves against, totally against Cao Kai, they only won like 10,000 votes. Right? They didn't get even one seat at all. So meaning it's not a big issue at all during the campaign. But after the campaign, the 112 became the biggest issue that the pro-regime trying to use to attack or to challenge the legitimacy of Cao Kai or move forward to actually stop them from getting into the prime minister candidacy. Okay. Well, all the Senate, most of the Senate trying to say that they will not vote for Move Forward Party because of the 112. But they all happen after the election. It's like the new battle started because we still need around 70 votes in order to have the Move Forward Party as the candidate for Move Forward Party to be the Prime Minister. Okay. And this is all the composition of the 250 Senate. Okay. 194 handpicked by the junta. 51 actually they vote among themselves, but in the end, the junta handpicked anyway. Okay. And 6 people from the army, the head of the army. So basically they are the people of the junta. Right. So Cao Kai play the hard game. They're trying to attract 50 people, but not really sure they can get 50 people. They didn't want Phum Chai Thai that got 70 people because it comes with a lot of price. They have to negotiate a lot. So my last slide, so many issues happen. So I think the new conflict happening now in Thailand, it's intensification of the conflict. It's not the end of the conflict, a new conflict happening. It's but the pro-regime actually is totally in decline. It was totally surprised. Okay, because they thought that if Pheu Thai won, they could have a better deal because Pheu Thai is kind of more moderate. Pheu Thai focusing more on economy, not politics. That's actually why they lost this time. Okay, because a lot of new people, a lot of people who upset of youth also upset with the unclear political position of Pheu Thai. Okay, in the end, they vote for Cao Kai, especially the pro-regime last time they vote for Cao Kai because they actually bought into the concept of political reform that Pheu Thai could not offer. Okay, so the new reformists actually the ex-pro-regime, right? They turn into Cao Kai. The red shirt, some of the red shirt. My friend did a research on this as kind of a sampling. He found that around 20% of people switched from Pheu Thai to Cao Kai too. And then the new voter, the first time voter that passed, they've been through the COVID time and the youth uprising. They moved to Cao Kai. That's why Cao Kai won landslide. So we're still in the process of a new hope, but I don't know if you are a big fan of Star Wars. I'm not sure that the Empire Strikes Back or not. And sorry that I take a lot of time on this. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that comprehensive and enlightening, and also in terms of the emphasis on media and the shifts in the voting alignments, a lot of fascinating material. Let me hand over without further ado to Dr. Ferrara.
Okay. Because I knew that Ajahn Pete had prepared a very comprehensive presentation on the elections themselves, I am actually not going to speak about the election results so much as what these election results mean in terms of, where Thailand is going and what it means, especially for either the continuation or perhaps the interruption of this cycle of instability that has defined the country's political development since 1932. Now, one measure or one indicator of this instability is provided in this slide, which is the only slide I will actually comment on. And this slide, just for those who are not familiar with it, plots scores that Thailand has been assigned from the organization Freedom House since Freedom House started gathering this data about pretty much every country in the world and a bunch of other territories, which I think they started in 1972. Now, Freedom House measures a country's performance on civil liberties and political rights, and so the best result that a country can achieve is to be scored given a score of 1 on civil liberties and a score of 1 on political rights. Of course, the worst score, which refers to countries that are least free, would be 7 on political rights and 7 on civil liberties. Now you can see here where Thailand has been all over this graph in the almost 50 years that Freedom House has been keeping score of this. Thailand has only been rated free you can see there in the portion of the graph where the dots are in the green. It's only been ranked as free, meaning ranked as a liberal democracy, true liberal democracy, once in the mid-70s, then briefly in the late 1980s, and then during the first few years after the promulgation of the 1997 Constitution. Now, where Thailand is now is actually the last scores that are on this graph refer to a year ago, but I checked the numbers and they are pretty much the same now. It's on the side of the graph that says least free, right? So it's got a score of civil liberties at 5, so one of the worst, and political rights has a score of 7 as of last year, which is the worst score that you can get. So, can the elections tell us something about, where Thailand is headed, right? Is this, merry-go-round of instability going to continue? Or is the country, destined to finally perhaps join or acquire a measure of international respectability and join the ranks of what we can refer to as normal countries? That remains to be seen, of course. The optimistic view of the last elections is that this changes everything and that the old order will have a pretty hard time undoing the results of this election. Now, I think there is some merit to this argument in the sense that if there is one verdict that the voters have delivered in this election that took place last month, is that the coup stage in 2014 has failed. Ironically, the coup stage in 2014 was staged to make up for the failure of the previous coup, which had taken place in 2006. And ironically, actually, looking at the results of the election, we've almost gone full circle. So Thai and Move Forward together have roughly the amount of votes that Thai used to have in 2005, where it completely dominated the election and won 75% of the seats. Of course, Thai back then did even better. But for those who are interested, not so much in restoring Thaksin or his family to power, but are more interested in, a democratic Thailand, these results are even better because, again, we see the emergence of a more principled force, and a force that is probably much more difficult to demonize on the part of the old order. So where are we going from here? I think Thailand is about to enter a very dangerous period, potentially a very volatile period. Royalists in the press have waited barely a couple of days to start complaining about parliamentary dictatorship, even though the new government hasn't been formed yet. Basically, their response is the same response that the Burmese regime had in 1990 when the NLD, swept the elections, meaning you can win the election, but that doesn't give you legislative and, executive power. Obviously, as just of today, I was reading in the newspaper that there's a threat that the whole election will be voided due to the fact that Pita has shares in a media company, and the one of the possibilities is that the Constitutional Court might actually disqualify every member of parliament elected under move forward and potentially nullify the election. Now, the reason why the situation is especially unstable, besides this fight over who's going to be prime minister and so on, is that you see on the electorate is on the side of greater democracy. The forces, for democracy will dominate the House of Representatives if the House of Representatives is seated. But Thailand is still governed by a constitution, which is a far short of a constitution that is far short of democratic. So a couple of things, of course, will are likely to happen. Next year, the old royalist establishment will actually lose the measure of protection that it's afforded by the Senate, because the Senate appointed by the junta will expire, and even though the Senate will not be directly elected, it will be selected with a very complicated system that goes from the provinces up in a very kind of corporatist fashion. And importantly, the Senate will also lose the capacity to participate in the election of the prime minister. It is also it's also natural to expect that if a government is allowed to be in office that is the expression of the will of the voters, and that this government will actually want to govern. And in order for it to govern, it will, almost inevitably encroach upon domains that unelected institutions in Thailand have always wanted for themselves. And one of the major bones of contention is likely to be the Constitution and amendments to the Constitution. Obviously, the Constitution is not only not very democratic, but is also very difficult to change. Institutions like the Constitutional Court have vast powers to make and break governments and so forth. And so once the pro-democracy forces start the process of amending the Constitution in a more democratic direction, then of course the old royalist establishment will be forced to make the usual choice, which is to let Thailand develop into a real liberal democracy, and at least allow the government chosen by the voters to actually govern the country, or else what? Or else well, they will be up to their usual shenanigans with the judicial interventions and so on. But ultimately, given that, especially given the weight of public opinion, their usual recourse will be, their main weapon will once again be a coup. And considering the fate of the last two coups d'etats, the chances that the next one will be successful are much lower, especially if we consider the fact that one of the main arguments that has been made over the past 70 years to justify coups d'etat has been that the Thai monarchy needs protection from elected governments. But up to the last coup, the Thai monarchy was headed by a popular and beloved king. And I'm not sure that anybody in Thailand would agree with the idea that their, civil and the political rights should be abridged for the sake of protecting King Vajiralongkorn. So again, time will tell, I guess, what will happen, but it isn't out of the question that we will see a new cycle of instability and violence, the outcome of which is unpredictable, given recent Thai history, except for the fact that we know that if that were to happen, there's not going to be a lot of ordinary people that, as usual, pay the price for it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Federico, for that larger perspective on the significance of the elections and the possible formation or non-formation of a new government based on the election results. So moving on to my contribution, last and likely least, and certainly the shortest, what I thought I could do is end up here with a regional perspective. I've discovered that at least one member of the audience is interested in the Philippines, so I will be briefly speaking about the Philippine contrast as well as other cases in Southeast Asia. Next slide, please. So what I want to talk about is go back to 2014, and even actually before that, actually we can go back to 1973. So the slide that's not here would be about the democratic spring in Southeast Asia, if you want to use that analogy from the Arab world, that began in Thailand in 1973 with student protests and led briefly to this flowering of democracy, and it showed up on the chart that Dr. Ferrara showed as a high point of Thai democracy by 1975, when there was an elected government, until the coup of 1976. So you had Thailand leading the way. Then a little over a decade later, you had people power in the Philippines overthrowing the Marcos dictatorship. Then you had Reformasi in Indonesia overthrowing the Suharto dictatorship. So you had a kind of democratic spring that swept the region. You could include Myanmar, right, with the reforms made there. Briefly, it turned out. You could include Malaysia in 2018. But there has been a reverse trend, as you've seen elsewhere in the world, including in the US under Trump, Brazil under Bolsonaro, and many European countries under right-wing populist rule, including now Italy, and possibly in the near future France. Stay tuned, right? But in Southeast Asia, Thailand was at the vanguard of this backsliding, this debilitation or elimination of political institutions and civil society spaces, sustaining democracy. And Thailand's a classic case. Both Dr. Pitt and Dr. Ferrara mentioned this, how so-called independent institutions get manipulated. They wind up being part of this backsliding process rather than being sort of referees in the democratic game. They are allies of the backsliders, of the autocratizers. And with the coup of 2014, you see this democratic regression very obviously, and it's met with. Sorry, if you can go back to the previous slide. You see this democratic regression in a very obvious way. 2 years later, then President Rodrigo Duterte is elected president of the Philippines. He starts a bloody war on drugs. Thousands, if not tens of thousands, are murdered extrajudicially by police vigilantes. A year later, many scholars would use 2017 as a starting point. The Indonesian president, Joko Widodo, begins to aggrandize powers. There are crackdowns on opposition that go beyond democratic bounds, even though it's in the name of combating extremism, which it surely was partially, but nonetheless, there's a general sense, and this shows up in Freedom House as well, that Indonesia, perhaps most subtly compared to the Thai case, certainly in the Philippine case, has undergone backsliding. More obviously, Cambodia under Hun Sen, he was already a dictator, but consolidated this dictatorship in the run-up to the 2018 elections, basically outlawing all opposition. And even though Malaysia had this brief moment of democratic hope with the 2018 elections that brought the opposition to coalition of power, some of you will remember that, by 2020, this government collapses in a kind of parliamentary maneuvering at the beginnings of the COVID pandemic. The Pakatan Harapan opposition government that had been attempting to restore democracy is toppled, and you see substantial backsliding under the cover of the COVID-19 pandemic. And then worst of all, of course, as we've discussed briefly previously, the coup in Myanmar. And that was, of course, the bloodiest and the most disheartening, of course, because Myanmar, even though it remained a hybrid regime with the military having plenty of reserve powers, there was hope that the country was moving toward a more democratic system. And after a overwhelming victory by the opposition, by the NLD, the civilian grouping around Aung San Suu Kyi, the military dispensed with them in a bloody coup. And now this country has descended into civil war, as you know. Next slide, please. But my next point is that while Thailand was at the forefront of backsliding, it was also a pioneer in terms of pushback against that. One scholar of Thailand, James Oki, has recently termed this democratic backlash, and I kind of like that term, a backlash against those who would take away democracy from the population. And I think nowhere is this, with the exception certainly of Myanmar, nowhere has this been more evident than in Thailand. We just don't see it as much as in Myanmar because, of course, there's very little press coverage because of the situation is so brutal. So Thailand is a country where we can still see and observe and hear reports about what's going on. And for example, there were flash mob protests. These are small but frequent protests, generally by young people in prominent locations, often in major cities such as Bangkok, going on since the coup in 2014, and then the large and radical student protests of 2020, radical because they raised the issue of lèse majesté and called for reforms to the monarchy, go on for 2 years, and some of them are quite large indeed. In the 2019 elections, as we've heard, the opposition parties performed well, Pheu Thai and what was then called the Future Forward Party, and the 2023 results of both previous speakers have shown are even more emphatic victories for the opposition, particularly, of course, for Move Forward, the successor of Future Forward. And only in Myanmar, as I said, have we seen stronger pushback against backsliding. In 2022, there were elections held in Malaysia. The autocratizers were punished, but the democratic oriented parties also didn't do particularly well, kind of an ambiguous outcome. And therefore, it's not surprising that the actual formation of the government was also ambiguous. A former oppositionist, Anwar Ibrahim, becomes is prime minister, but he coalesces with the former ruling party, UMNO, which had, by the way, jailed him on a couple of occasions, but never mind. They're now officially allies in this ruling coalition. And in the Philippines, we see a very interesting, and Indonesia, I should add to this, example of where backsliding has not led to that much pushback. The Philippines has seen some large protests against the drug war, against an anti-terrorism law a few years later, but the opposition has faced repeated electoral defeats in midterms in 2019. And now, of course, the president of the Philippines is the dictator's son, Ferdinand Marcos Jr. So if you're looking for a case where the opposition is on the defensive, that's certainly the Philippine one. We'll see what happens in the Indonesian elections next year. But Joko Widodo's popularity seems not to have suffered much from his executive aggrandizement. The opposition seems quite weak there as well. Next slide, please. So one question that emerges despite the uncertainties about what's going to happen after this 2023 overwhelming electoral result, government formation is still very much uncertain and could be reversed. Nonetheless, we can say in this comparative perspective that the opposition in Thailand has been relatively robust. Since the 2014 coup, and even earlier, if you take Pheu Thai, which has consistently performed well despite repeated efforts. People speak of two coups, 2006 and 2014. Actually, one could argue there's three, also in 2008 behind the scenes, with the occupation of the airport and so on. So Pheu Thai has repeatedly withstood these assaults, and of course, not just on the party itself and on its leadership, who've been put in front of courts and convicted of various offenses, banned from politics and so on, but also the accompanying civil society group, the Red Shirts, have been quite strongly repressed since 2014. And yet a new protest movement emerges, call it an organic protest movement, the youth protest movement, which in a sense kind of takes the role of the Red Shirts in an opposition social mobilization, social movement mobilization, giving the opposition strength in an electoral authoritarian system in which elections have limited impact. So that's why protests have been so important in the Thai context. And it's the weakness of protests elsewhere, particularly in the Philippines and Indonesia, as I mentioned, that makes it more difficult for the opposition to be successful there. And another reason, obviously, for the success, at least in terms of being able to resist, not necessarily being able to win and form the government, but at least being able to resist this autocratization, is the weakness, the legitimation crisis of the government. And that was discussed extensively. This was as Dr. Ferrara said, an incredibly clumsy effort to legitimize a blatant military coup of 2014 with a new constitution, which was clearly undemocratic, with elections in 2019, which were manipulated in a number of important ways. And now we don't even know if the 2023 results will be accepted. We have a new king. We have a military leadership, which is unpopular. So there's a confluence of factors that mean that the government itself suffers from very limited legitimacy. And of course, the only regime in the region that can top it for its lack of legitimacy is Myanmar, where it's literally only the barrel of a gun that keeps the military in power. Whereas executive aggrandizement in the Philippines and Indonesia has been relatively successful, in large part because both regimes, while acting undemocratically in many ways, can claim legitimacy because of their opinion poll popularity and their success in the ballot box. Next slide, please. So what perhaps I want to say is it's interesting to point out that what we've seen in Thailand is kind of weak strongman rule, legitimacy challenge, military monarchical rulers with a strong opposition, and a revival of a kind of civilian versus military cleavage, which has precedents in protests in the early 90s, protests in the early 70s, and so on. So it's kind of a recurring pattern in Thai politics. Plus critique of the monarchy's untouchable role in Thai politics with resilient opposition parties and this new youth protest movement. While the conservative establishment has not yet relented, as we've heard, I would argue a Myanmar-style autogolpe, a self-made coup, which, by the way, has a precedent in Thailand, of course, in the early 70s, is unlikely, or if it, of course, does occur, it's unlikely to achieve much acceptance. Again, in the Thai case, that led to massive protests in 1973, as I mentioned. Thailand also has much more to lose in terms of its establishment. It's an infinitely wealthier country than Myanmar, sophisticated political and economic system, and such a blatant power grab would certainly have huge financial costs that would not just affect ordinary Thais, but surely the military and monarchical establishment as well. And my concluding point would be that the Thai case shows that there can be strong pushback against backsliding, even during this wave, which includes Southeast Asia, of autocratization. So thank you for that. I'll leave it at that point. We have a half an hour remaining, and we have time for questions, comments, also within the panel, if there are any cross questions. Do we have any questions online?
Yeah, we have two.
Okay, what, maybe we can start with that.
So, yeah. You think that 2016 Constitution is still the Constitution for allowing the military to maintain power for the long term. It allows for elections and some of the other trappings of the democracy system. But it keeps the military at the core of the system, and it provides them with the power to overrule election results and then parties and candidates that is valid. If the election is null or is disqualified or MFP unbanned, what kind of response do you predict from the population? How long do you think the protest will be? After the banning of future forward, the 2020-2021 protests were made up of about 30,000 or so protesters, and mainly individuals from Bangkok, the young generation. The protests were not large enough to diverse enough to have any.
Turns out we had a fourth panelist. Long question. I'll hand over to you.
Well, I'm not sure I can answer all the questions, but well, when we talk about transition, right? There are two directions of transition, right? Transition to democracy and transition, not just transition from democracy, it's the transition to democracy, and in Thailand it's also the transition from full autocracy into a hybrid form. Okay, so the constitution, actually the current constitution was also underestimating the power of what Professor Mark talked about, the pushback, right? Because they set the time limit for the 5-year transition. They thought that it would be okay. First, right, they make it very difficult to revise. They allow the senator to be part of the voting for the candidate. So the senator, this senator who actually handpicked by the junta will be expiring next year. So I mean, theoretically, if you can prolong the situation, right, up to the next year, right, the senator will be gone, right, and we will be back to the normal procedure, which is we only need 250 from the lower parliament, but we're wasting the time for 1 year, right? That's why they're thinking the democratic opposition thinking about how to disqualify Pitha in a very unfair charge, which actually lasting for already 4 years, that whether he is actually having a share in the media, and that media is actually not working in the media anymore, and he's actually just the manager of the what is called the inheritance. Okay, it's actually from his father, and he could not sell it yet because of the legal case of the media itself. But well, if that happened, right? Well, he might be disqualified from the MP, but whether he would be disqualified from the prime minister candidate is still very up in the air, and whether we can disqualify the whole party is not clear yet, right? So it depends on how the regime is going to deal with it, because now it's obvious that the first and the second party is from the pro-democracy. Okay, and I'm not sure the other questions. Any other questions on this? I think I've already covered.
One question was about what kind of protests you expect.
Well, it's very difficult. I mean, there will be a protest. The issue is not about the protest, right? It's about how you can organize and sustain the protest. Because the protest that can put the government down will last at least half a year. And what's going on in the counter democracy industry in Thailand, it's not like the old day of the military marching into the street and just getting into the media. Right? They know that the media now is so powerful, and they need to do what they call, actually Pia would call, is the lawfare. It's not just a warfare. So there are two mechanisms of putting down democratic government, and mostly they're fighting against the democratic government through the constitutional interpretation. They need to set that cause first, okay, to weaken the government with a lot of legal charge. Okay, they could not just come like the military just got into the scene like in Africa, things like that. Not anymore. They're very sophisticated, and all the constitutional organization they actually put in place by the junta. Okay, so that is actually the important part, and that's my estimation is that they will let Pita from the government first, and then they will disqualify it later, because now there are two big organizations that can put Pita down. The first one is the election commission, but the election commission doesn't have strong legitimacy. They probably set the case up to the constitutional court, because the constitutional court is more self-protected by the law. You cannot challenge the constitutional court. Even the protest cannot challenge the constitutional court. Okay, so you cannot say anything against the constitutional court. Actually, you will be put down by the law. So they will let the constitutional court do the job. Okay, so another scenario is that they will delay the nomination until the constitutional court make a decision. Okay, so what happened with the future forward was that when they've been put down, right, they need a flash mob for like several weeks before the organic mob started. And it's not just about Bangkok anymore. If you look at what's happening with the vote from Move Forward this time, right, that I show you, is all over Thailand, and the level of penetration for the internet is totally different now. Okay, you cannot stop the internet sentiment, right? And the sentiment, I don't know, it's politics in Thailand is moving beyond a pure ideology into a sentiment too, and it's difficult to navigate the sentiment of the people. That's what I think Professor Federer talk about too. I mean, it's the magnitude of the violence and anger. It's hard to predict. Okay, and the internet is reaching out people beyond the 2000s, the color time politics. That time it was dominated by the city, but this time all the people outside Bangkok is actually very wise on TikTok and everything, especially the Middle East, the northeastern one. I mean, if you look at all the audience in YouTube and in a lot of media in Thailand, actually, I would say the relatively poorer, they are also more powerful in the internet now. It's not like 20 years ago when the net descent was less than 1 million. Okay.
Just to add one thing to that, again, this is interesting contrast to the Philippine case where the opposition complains about disinformation on the internet and the dominance of the Duterte forces and now the Marcos Jr. forces. And in Thailand, even though of course there also is a lot of disinformation, the opposition has been very successful, as Dr. Pitt showed in his presentation and what he just said, in getting his message across and using the internet also to counter some of the inherent advantages pro-government candidates have. Next question, is there a further? Yeah.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Quite insightful. I've been in Thailand, was following all of the news, but this one is definitely one step further. I'm wondering if any of you has any comment from an international dimension, both from an economic and political perspective. For instance, in 2014, there was a muted condemnation from the US, for instance, for non-democratic, for the coup, for instance. So there was a condemnation, but a bit muted. But at the same time, now Thailand, tourism dependent, is moving past COVID, tourism is improving. If they disqualify, if there will be protests, this one can have, of course, an impact potentially on tourism, on investment. I'm wondering if you have any comment on this political and economic international dimension. I hope I didn't miss something.
The right wing, right? Okay, the pro regime is very wise this
Okay.
time. So they playing on two big rhetoric after election. Okay, one is the less majesty, right? They said, okay, this party is aiming to kind of disrespect to the king, right? And that's the biggest rhetoric in the senator group, that the main reasons why they're not voting, okay, that we already talked about. And the second one, the right wing two biggest media, Top News and the managers. Okay, these two are playing on the new rhetoric of an anti-American rhetoric. It looked funny at first, right? They have a bunch of people gathering in front of the US embassy. Okay, say, and making a reference like, well, making a reason like, okay, now the US is coming back to Thailand again, building up the big consular office up in Chiang Mai, and they're gonna tap a lot of information on China in Thailand. And these two media, they actually pro-China. And well, if you are like just woke up in Thailand, right, after 20 years, 30 years, you will be surprised that now we actually think like China is the best friend and the US is the worst enemy thing. But well, my interpretation is that they set up this scene as a kind of an attempt to fend off the Western intervention if they're doing something further in terms of anti-democracy in Thailand, because they started to have a critical mass on this information on anti-American. Okay, but well, it looked funny at first, but now it's more like orchestrated of this kind of sentiment among the pro-regime that, well, the US is behind the Move Forward Party. I don't know, it doesn't make sense, but it makes sense among the bubble, within the bubble, and it's growing every day in terms of the content of the media. It's like the RT in Thailand.
Further questions? Yes.
Thank you for the talk. I'm actually quite interested about the because through the elections we noticed the sky fall of the PewDie. The PewDie performed at least comparing to the polls. Like, do you know, do you have a sense like who actually PewDie is now representing, given that a lot of former supporters have probably gone to Move Forward, or probably some of the former supporters of Democrats to Move Forward. So like, who is PewDie actually representing these days? Are they die hard? You know what's trending or
the funniest comment online, right? And a big consensus among many people is that, well, they couldn't keep Thaksin away from his mobile phone. Okay, because he kept twittering a lot of things that actually put his party away from the people. Okay, and then his show too. So basically, I didn't talk much in the slide, but I put the word in the slide, which is, I think it's this time the gist of the political competition is actually the issue of the political campaign itself. There's a problem of political campaign. The economic policy of Pheu Thai seem to be very well thought, but it's only one group of Pheu Thai team that working on that, and they didn't actually convey into the other side of Pheu Thai group, which is the candidate group. When the candidate talk about the policy, it's not really like come from their own original idea. they are actually the real group that working on policy in Pheu Thai, and Pheu Thai believe that they will still be a party-based policy. But well, if you look at it from another perspective, and it's actually proved by Thaksin by one of his show. But another way to look at Pheu Thai is not the policy-based party or the programmatic one. It's actually a product business-like party. Because many times that Thaksin talk about people is like the country is a company, right? And people is like the customer. It's not a totally bad idea, but well, with the political intensification for the past so many years, right? The main issue now seems to be more political model than economic model. I did ask him in the program and he didn't answer me. And on another show that one of my friends make a reference to my question to him, he trashed it and he said, no, his party is moderate and not extreme like Cao Kai. And that actually pissed a lot of people off. Second point is a political strategy of Pheu Thai. They actually officially in the red shirt organization. One year before the election, they invented the new organization, a wake organization named Pheu Thai Family. Okay, and put his sister later on became the prime minister candidate. Okay, as a head of the Pheu Thai family with the red symbol, right? And put the one of the key person, Nathawut Saikura, of the red shirt in to become the director of that family, right? But a lot of leader of Pheu Thai of the red shirt, they disqualified from politics due to the protest charge. But a lot of spirit of red shirt, right? Especially the hardcore red shirt feel like they've been betrayed, right? And then that's why they move to Cao Kai. Okay, so it's then the third strategy that is wrong is they keep talking about landslide, which kind of the same sentiment that people fear. A lot of people fear too, meaning like they fear that the idea of parliamentary authoritarianism will be back, right? Because the key one of the issue of populism, right? It's not just about vote buying thing, but when you have a populist leader, right? They always say that they come from the people. So the kind of corruption charge and the kind of reform is not possible with the populist politics, because populist politics claim for the people, and they also claim that they come from election. So they say, okay, I came from election, so if you don't like me, you fight with me in the next election. That's always the issue of Pheu Thai. Okay, so when they got asked by so many program, they always say that, okay, we need landslide so that we can implement our program, right? And they didn't talk a lot about, well, how can people participate in check and balance of their program. Okay, and that's what I think it's all about, the electoral strategy this time, that they too much confident in their policy and they too much confident in the victory in the past. And for the past 4 years, they didn't perform well at all in the parliament. And that's what Cao Kai did, right? Cao Kai almost, they're pushing so many programs, even though they were the opposition party, right? And they keep that 3 things, that the biggest official agenda from the leader of Cao Kai were military reform by ending the military conscription, the liberalization of alcohol for the sake of economic development. And the third one is equal marriage. I mean, the same-sex marriage. for the social reform. But some people say that this is even more important than a free check by เพื่อไทย free check from เพื่อไทย Why? Because in rural area, in many area, they don't like that to have their kids to go to the military. It's not necessarily mean they disagree with the military or they don't like the king, right? They actually losing their member of the family to the military for 2 years, right? And they don't get the money. Okay, so they lost the labor for 2 years, and those labor get into more like a service job for the general, right? So it's actually has something to do with the human rights issue. Okay, so that is some people feel like it is more important than just getting the check from เพื่อไทย and เพื่อไทยdid it's very controversial economic policy. เพื่อไทย will give a lot of money for only 6 months. And they emphasize that it's gonna be only for 6 months that they're gonna give the money, a large sum of money. And you have to be able to use that money only for the shop around 4 kilometers away from your house. But they're very well thought in terms of economic model, but it's not getting into the sentiment of the people. Or some people even think that, oh, we're gonna get the check anyway, but let's vote for ก้าวไกล because they don't feel like ก้าวไกล is gonna win, but they want to make that statement. But in the end, ก้าวไกล won.
One question, because you mentioned the Thai is very interesting to me, but another question is related to the Democrat Party. You shared your slide that the result of Democrat Party suffered a lot this time, and it used to be like one of the very big party, right? Very popular among advocates, small urban settlers in Thailand. My question is why? Is it related to the unpopular monarchy movement these days in Bangkok, or what happened actually?
For the Democrat, it's a tragedy, okay? And first of all, the Democrat disunited. Okay, if you talk about Democrat, there are 2 big camps of Democrat: the Bangkok-based Democrat and the Southern-based Democrat. They all united by Chwan Lik Pai, who got rewarded as the president of the parliament. Okay, so that is the old image of the Democrat: very gentleman guy and very liberal, very kind of a nice guy and well educated. But what happened with the Democrats started by the end of last election, because actually the platform of the Democrat, especially in Bangkok, was actually to go against Prayut. It was led by Abhisit, the last leader, right? So the southern part actually wanted to join the government, to join Prayut, but Abhisit was running on the platform of anti-Prayut in Bangkok. That's why last time Democrat got 474,000, even though it couldn't crystallize into any seat, right? But they still 14%, around 14% of the voter in Bangkok. Even though they couldn't translate it into any seat, it's just half of the future forward, but couldn't get into any seat due to the very complex system last time. But this time it's totally gone, because actually this group is the group that anti-Prayut anyway. So last time Abhisit needs to sacrifice himself by resigning from the head of the party and let the leader from the south to run the party in order to join with the Prayut government, right? To get the Ministry of Commerce and Ministry of Agriculture, but they didn't perform very well too. They still won a lot in the south, but it's gone in Bangkok. And even in the South, they won in local constituency, right? But the popularity is gone, right? I don't think there is any constituency that they won the party list at all. So they actually make the wrong. I mean, some people might say they survive, right? They survive at the expense of giving up the hope from the middle class in Bangkok, right? Because they join Prayut, and the performance of Prayut for the COVID crisis management was bad. Even the niece of Abhisit now is the leader of the Move Forward Party. Right? Parit Vacharasinghe is actually the niece of Abhisit, and he ran under Democrat last time, and now he become the chief PR person of the policy PR of the Move Forward Party. Okay, and the son of Surin Pitsuwan, the head of ASEAN a long time ago, and the foreign affairs minister now is the head of the public international relation team of Move Forward. Okay, so Move Forward attracting the potential. It used to be the potential of the young Democrat moving into Move Forward Party too.
Okay, we have just a minute or so left. Yeah, go ahead.
Question about the economic foundation of the country. So in Myanmar, the Commodore has a very autonomous economic base that with all their dual economy with the happy capitalism or economies that are supporting them. So they have a lot of income outside of the national budget, outside the tax revenue. So I want to ask about the military in Thailand. The short question: who is funding them? Like, where do they get their funding from? And are they as autonomous as the Myanmar military?
I don't think so. There's still a lot of work in Thailand by Paul Chamber, but mostly I think the military got the money from the budget.
Which is huge.
Yeah, and the budget is huge. But in Thailand, the other mystery part is actually the monarchy part, right? That's also very rich and has its own budget. And also there's a lot of government budget that's getting into promoting the monarchy and getting into the monarchy affair, right? And it's being hidden into different ministry budget, like Ministry Home Office, Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Defense, right? There's still a lot of project that's going into the monarchy or using the monarchy as an reasons to do the project too. Okay, so what they call royal project in Thailand are very complicated. It's the king's project, the queen's project, the family project, the project initiated by the king and got by the previous king, and even any project that use the name like inspired by the king idea. So there are so many projects that not only the military but the big bureaucracy can use, using the budget, the tax from the people.
Of course, it's long-standing tradition that military generals are, offered places on the board of major conglomerates, and that usually, serves as a additional source of personal wealth, but not so much in terms of like, the military itself as an organization getting resources that way.
Right. So we're going to need to leave it at that. It's actually past 5:30, so I want to again thank in particular, of course, Dr. Pong Suwat for coming and taking time from his travels in Hong Kong to join us today. To Dr. Ferrara for joining as well. To you all for attending, those in person and online, and wish you all a pleasant evening. Thanks.